Hi, I'm Ernie. I'm going to show you a neat little science trick. First off, I love LED strip lights or tape lights. You can see here some up here in my loft where I have my med scientist lab. I have, as far as individual LEDs, a lot of them there. Throughout my shop, I probably have 10,000 or more individual LEDs. And I like these strip lights because, one, they don't take up much room, they light good and all that. But here's a neat scientific trick. Watch this. Look at that. Where's the shadow? Does that pin have a shadow? Hardly any shadow there. That's because those lights are all spread out along a long path, so it gets rid of a lot of shadows. You think that's great for photography, right? Well, watch this trick. If I turn this pin sideways, all of a sudden, wow, a very prominent shadow. That's because the pin is lined up parallel with the LEDs. If you have a case like that, that can really cause you shadows in video or whatever else. So that's one problem you can run into with LED strip lights if you're trying to do a video. And I'll show you more in just a little bit. Neat trick. No shadow, hardly any shadow, to a very prominent shadow. This is a picture of my computer desk, and this is where I do most of my videos and my music compositions. Above this is a strip of LED lights, like what I showed you before, and those have a problem with causing shadows from my glasses. I got on Amazon to look for options as far as diffusing that light. And for the first pass, what I decided to do is I ordered this diffuser film. It's plastic sheet. It feels like mylar from what I used to use for engineering drawings, except for it's matte on both sides. This is 16 inches across and a long roll, way more than I ever need. But I'm going to try to make this into a simple DIY, simple, cheap diffuser for those overhead lights and see how much it helps. I then took a 2x6 and run it through my bandsaw, not my bandsaw, my table saw. This is the table saw, folks. Anyway, I cut some 1/4 inch thick strips along the length of that. They basically looked like 10-foot long yardsticks. At first, I thought the knots might be a problem and they wouldn't hold up, but they came out okay. I cut a total of 5. One of them was for practice and was a little thin, but the other 4 came out good, and that's what you see here. Next, I laid laid one of those long strips under the long edge of that mylar plastic strip, and I overlapped the mylar about 3/4 of the distance across there, like you see here. Next step is take another one of those strips and lay it on top of the mylar or plastic, whatever that is, like you see here, and run staples. I used a staple gun, electric staple gun, and run staples every 6 or 8 inches all the way down the strip. Now, an interesting thing you run into is that 2x6 was pretty straight, but when you rip off little thin strips like this, they're not quite as straight. So you'll have to manhandle it a little bit as you go down through and put the staples in there to keep them all lined up. And it winds up being just a little warped when you do that, but it's not too bad. Like I said, I used an electric staple gun. When you get to be my age, you learn to appreciate having power tools instead of the old hand operated staple gun. I used 3/8 inch staples and about every 6 or 8 inches, something like that. And half inch might have worked, but they might have been a little pokey out the backside in some spots. I repeated the same thing for the other side, as you can see here, and then did not do it for the ends. I left the ends undone, and you'll see why shortly. Now, what I plan on doing is I'm not going to put the end bars on there. I'm just going to leave this like this. So one of these will go on the ceiling, and the other will go on the wall, and fasten it that way. Now, there's a few wrinkles in here because you rip these out of a straight 2x6 Once you rip them, they're not quite straight anymore, so you've got to kind of manhandle them and get them lined back up. But I think this would be fine for the diffuser. I think it's going to work out fine. Now, installing this thing up there on the ceiling, this goes in the joint between where the ceiling and the ceiling and the wall meet, and the lights are right there, so it's going to go diagonally across there. Now, getting that installed single-handed could be a challenge, but just ask my wife. I can be stubborn, so I'll probably figure out a way to do this. One thing that might help me out is I've got these toggle bolts from Lowe's that are hammer in. You don't have to pre-drill to put them in, and I'm hoping that will help me out. It could be that there's insulation behind the drywall, so that may interfere with it. A lot of things when I install them, I try to pick up a stud, but I think picking up a stud is way overkill for this. So I'm just going to use these toggle bolts. Again, I hope the insulation doesn't block the toggle, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's where I'm going. I'll measure the distance between here and here, and then go up and I cut a board for that and hold it up against the ceiling so I can mark how far along the wall it's going to be and how far along the ceiling. So that's what we're going to be doing next. All right. Okay, I'm back with the tape measure. So the total width of this, when we're done here, is 16.5. This roll itself is just right at 16 inches long. The space between the two, which is what I need to know when I install it, is 13.5 inches across in between there. Okay, this is where it's going to go, where the ceiling meets the wall, 10 feet long. And yeah, the ceiling's angled. It's low over on that side, high over here, because I'm up at the top of my shop, way up high. So first thing I need to do is, my computer table is bolted to the wall, so I need to unbolt that and get it out of the way so I can get a ladder in there. Let's do that. This is my 13.5 inch board, and we'll see what we can figure out up here. I feel a stud right there, and that coincides with this. There's a line there where something shifted, but anyway, let's see what we can do here. So 9 inches by 9 inches is where we need to be. And then we need to measure out 5 feet. stud there, no stud there, so right about centered on here. There's no stud in there, not there. How do you like that for a stud finder? Iron fist method. Ha. So that 9 inches is to the inside, so we need to add 1 3/4 for the width of those strips. So that'd be 10 3/4, right, lined up with that, or at least close to it. So right here is where we want that. And the first hole, let's put it halfway between there, so there's where the first mounting screw is going to go, centered right there. All right. Pre-drilled a hole here for the center. Here we go. Here's the first one. Whew, it's hot up there. There we go. All done. You still recording? It says you're still recording, but there she is. I think it looks good. Now I have to put the desk back in place and do a before and after picture to see how good my shadows are on my face. Yay. Well, here's some before and after. Over here on the left is before I put the diffuser in, and you can see the dark shadows in my eyes there from the top of my frame. The frame was parallel to the lights, so it was causing that sharp shadow like we talked about earlier. And here is an after, and that shadow is softened, not nearly as much as I'd hoped. So, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. The diffuser is working, but it's still kind of bright in the middle. So it's not as good as I'd hoped it would be. Show you that in a second. But this guy, he got a, that's one grumpy looking guy. It's probably because it didn't turn out quite as good as I'd hoped. And I was hot and sweaty from all the work. And here's a picture looking right at the diffuser, kind of close up, and you can see that right down the middle, it's still kind of bright down the middle, and so it's not doing 100% good job of diffusing, but it is better than it was. So we'll see if I added more light on the side later, but yeah, I think it was worth the effort to get it to where it's at. Well, I appreciate y'all watching. I hope you enjoyed it and had a good time. I like the way it turned out. It looks pretty good for no more money and effort that went into it. And parts of it a little bit tricky. Uh, so if you like it, make sure you hit subscribe and hit like. It always helps so I can keep doing these videos. Have a good day.